Welcome to Living Life, the show that allows you to pursue things that make you happy, curious, and keep you open-minded. This is Living Life on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Welcome to the Sweets, Treats, and Eats Mini Clinic on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I'm Howie Morgasen. On today's episode of the Mini Clinic, we're going to talk about pickling. And pickling is a lot of different things. What we're going to do today is called a quick pickle. And so if you want to have something for that day that you're working on, a quick pickle does that. Now, the longer it sits, the better it gets. But 24 hours, you should get some really good flavor out of it. You can pickle all kinds of different vegetables. Two of the most popular ones are the ones we're going to work with today. So we have a cucumber, which becomes a pickle, and then we have an onion, which becomes a pickled onion. So these are the two most popular. We're going to use a vinegar-based brine. Brine is the liquid that you pour in with the vegetables that soften them and infuse flavor into them. So why don't we get started? So as you can see, I have the two vegetables here. I have a very sharp knife to do this, and we did a whole clinic on cutlery, which you can look up in the library on YouTube. But for this, you want to use a sharp knife, not necessarily a serrated knife, but a sharp knife because it gives you better control over what you do. So for the cucumber, what you want to do is you want to do disc slices because you know what pickles look like. But you don't want to make them too thin because you want to be able to pick them up and you want them to be crunchy. So what we do is we cut off the end there and then we make slices. Right? And I'll continue to work on those. Next, we have the onion over here. This is a red onion, but you can use a yellow or a white onion if you want to. I cut off the stem end of it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the onion in half that way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to make very thin slices with the onion. And the reason why you make them thin is because you want the pickling juice to be absorbed into it. Okay, so I'm going to keep cutting these up here, and then when we continue, we'll show you what's next. Okay, now you can see I have my sliced cucumbers here, and now what we want to do is extract the water out of the cucumbers so the pickling liquid can be infused into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cucumbers and put them into this strainer that I have here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some kosher salt and I'm going to sprinkle it into it like that. And then I'm just going to mix it around a little bit. And so what you have to do is let this sit out on the counter for about 30 minutes. And in 30 minutes, you're going to have liquid that is in the bowl and it will extract all the water out of it. And then we'll be ready to go to the next step. So as you can see, I finished slicing the onions. And just a note, some people tear up from onions. It's natural. Some of the compounds in the onions, when you slice them, get exposed to the air and cause you to tear. If you use a really sharp knife, that helps cut down on it. So if you have that, that's fine. So now we have the sliced onions, and what we're going to do is put them into a strainer like this. So I'm going to pour them in here. Okay, so we have that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some boiling hot water, which I have here, and I'm going to pour that over the onions. And that's going to soften the onions. And then what I'm going to do is just make sure that I press the onions down into the hot water. Okay, and then that has to sit for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. And then we'll come back and start putting them into the container. So now we have our onions, and as you can see, they have softened up. We had them soaking in the hot water. Now, I said 1.5 to 2 minutes. You can leave it longer if you want. It just makes the onions softer. So you experiment. You do it a couple of times. You'll see how you best like the onions to be. So we're using a pickling spice here, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then I will tell you a little bit about the ingredients that are in there. So there's cinnamon, allspice, mustard seed, coriander seed, bay leaves, ginger, clove, red pepper, black pepper, cardamom, and mace. And that's what is in there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our containers that we're gonna put the vegetables in, and we're gonna do like a layered type of thing. So we start by taking some of the pickling spice and put it at the bottom of the container, okay? And then we take some of the onions and we're gonna put them in, okay? Push them down a little bit, okay? And then we go back and we put in some more of the pickling spice. We layer it in there. All right, and then we go back for some more onion over here. All right, a little bit more. All right, and then I'm gonna put just a little bit more of the pickling spice at the top, and I'm gonna continue and do the other container that I have, and then we're gonna get to the pickling liquid, so stay with us. So as you see here, we put our onions in the pickling vessel and the pickling spice, and we layered it, vegetable spice, and now we're gonna build the pickling liquid. So in this pitcher over here, I have white vinegar, and to that, I'm going to add sugar, and I'm going to add salt, and I'm going to add hot water. This is boiling hot water. It needs to be hot because all of this needs to be able to dissolve. So then what I'm gonna do is mix this, and you're gonna mix it well because it has to be dissolved into it in order for it to work. I'm just gonna take a peek inside of it to see, make sure it's all dissolved. And we're looking pretty good. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is take our pickling vessels that we have here, the containers, and we're gonna pour in the pickling solution, and until it covers what we have, and then we'll do the next one. And make sure that you cover everything, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this sit at room temperature with the cover off, and then to let it cool down a little bit. Then once it's cooled down, we're gonna put the covers on it, and then we're just gonna turn it upside down, right side up, and then we're gonna put it in the fridge. It should go for about a day in there, but at least 8 hours. So if you wanna use it the same day, you do it in the morning, you can use it later in the day. So that's it for the onions. And coming up next, we're gonna do the pickles. So stay with us. Okay, so we finished the onions and they're off sitting. And now we have the cucumbers. And if you remember, we had those sitting with salt in it to draw the water out. And then I washed them, and make sure when you wash the cucumber that you wash it well. Under cold water, keep on refilling the container with it until you get all the salt out of it. It could take you a good 5 minutes of washing it to make sure that they're not too salty. Okay, so we have our cucumbers here. We have our pickling spice, which we used as part of the onions. It's the same pickling spice. And we have our container, and now what we're gonna start doing is preparing the containers. And we're gonna do the same leveling approach that we did for the onions. So you put in some of the cucumbers, okay? Then you take some of the pickling spice that we have with all kinds of good herbs and spices in it. We put some of that in here. Then we go back, we get some more cucumbers, and we put those in. Okay, and then we go back again for the pickling spice. Put a bunch of that in. And then we put another layer of the cucumbers. So I'm gonna finish this one up, and I'm also gonna work on this other container that we have here. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put both the onions and the pickles in the refrigerator. And then when they've sat for a while, we're going to come back and taste them and tell you about it. So stay with us. All right, so we built up our cucumbers in our containers here with the pickling spice. And now we're going to build the pickling solution. So we have the vinegar in, and we're going to add the sugar, and we're going to add the salt. And then we're going to add the boiling hot water. Okay, and then we're going to mix it well so everything dissolves in it. And again, I'm going to take a look to see, to make sure, and it's looking pretty good. Another second here. Okay, that looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my containers and I'm going to add the pickling solution to each of them. And what you want to make sure is that you go right to the top of the vegetables that you have in there. So that's the first one. That looks pretty good. And now let's get the second one here. Okay, let's go back, put a little bit more in here. Okay, so these will sit out at room temperature for about an hour. And then we're going to put covers on them, and we're going to just turn them over and back, and then put them into the refrigerator. The best would be for about a day, but after 8 hours, they're perfectly good to use. So if you're going to use them the same day, do the pickling in the morning, and then by the time dinner rolls around, you should be good to go. So that is sort of it about pickling. What we're going to do now is we're going to come back in about a day, and then we're going to taste them and tell you about them. And I just wanted to remind you, if you want to check us out on social media, it's at Living Life ETB on all our social media channels. So make sure you check us out. Okay, so now we're a day later. It's amazing what 24 hours will do. And we have our pickled onions and our pickled cucumbers. And as you can see, the onions look great. And then you can also see that the pickles look great. And you can see all those pickling spices that are in there. We did turn them upside down and right side up a couple of times just to make sure everything got mixed in. So why don't we try them? So we'll start with the onion. Let's grab a piece of the onion. Let's try that. That is really good. And still have some crunch in it, which is great. Let's grab a piece of pickle. Let's try that. That is terrific. You should really try this quick pickling method. It's really easy. And it's a lot of fun. The onions, we put the hot water in to soften them up a little bit before we set them for pickling. The cucumbers, we put the salt in, we let them sit to draw out some of the water. And then we added the pickling solution to both, and we let them sit for a day. Sit a couple more days, they'll be even better. So you really should try pickling. It's a lot of fun. And to do it the day of, if you do it in the morning, you can use it at night for dinner. So give it a try, and I will see you on the next Sweets, Treats, and Eats. See you then.